So nice to see you all. Thank you for being here. I'm incredibly honored to be here speaking on behalf of the world and to be sharing this message with you all. So I know that we all share something incredibly deep. We share a connection with nature and the natural world, whether we're aware of this or not. And as we're starting 2024 and looking towards the new year, I wanted to offer us a message and provide a fresh perspective, as I say. But again, I think many of us know this message to be true. So the title of my talk is Ecopsychology, a breath of fresh air. And I'll ask you all, how about you join me in taking a deep breath in and a long exhale out. So my talk today is dedicated to my animal companion, Champ. My wife and I recently lost Champ, and yet each and every day, Champ is still teaching us lessons of love. And I feel very grateful to have had a relationship with Champ. I hope all of you have animal companions that touch your hearts as well and enrich your lives. I'd also like to quickly say thank you to my colleagues in ecopsychology, those who came before me, those who stand beside me, and those who have not yet come. Your voices give words to the message that I'm sharing today, and you will hear their voices in my talk. So thank you all. Thank you all very, very much. Now, as I'm starting my talk, As I'm starting my talk, I would like to invite us all to take a moment of reflection, a moment of pause. You might close your eyes if you feel comfortable with that. I'd like us to reflect on a memory, an experience we had connecting with nature. Perhaps a time you felt meaning, a time you felt significance, a time you felt love with the natural world. Can you get yourself back to that place? Where were you? What were you doing? How did you feel in that moment? Perhaps you felt peaceful. Maybe you even felt invigorated. Maybe you felt happy. Maybe you felt fearful, a little fearful, maybe a lot fearful. I've had those experiences with nature. Were there any others with you? Other humans? What about other animals? Were there animals there in that moment? How about a wild animal? Yeah. You meet eyes with that wild animal, you share that moment, that connection. It's electric. It enriches our experience. You know, a short moment that lasts a lifetime. How many of you have dogs and cats at home? Yeah, right? That's the human nature connection. We pay attention to our animal companions, and our animal companions, well, they're attuned to the natural world. They help us see those natural wonders. So these experiences, this is evidence that our connection with the natural world is beneficial for us. It's beneficial for our physical health, our mental health, our social well-being, perhaps even spiritual benefits, if that language is okay with you. I think many of us know this to be true, and well, I'm here today to let us know that it's verifiable by scientific evidence. My field, the field of ecopsychology, gives us science and evidence suggesting the benefits of the natural world for all of us, humans and non-humans alike. Now, it's not enough to learn about the benefits that the human-nature connection brings, but I believe we need to experience these benefits. I think we need to experience this connection with the natural world. And so today I'll be asking us to recollect that connection. Like I said, I know we all have it, whether or not we're aware of it or not. We weren't born into this world, but we come out of it. And so, how do we know about these benefits of the human nature relationship and this connection? Well, we have two separate fields that we can draw from. We have the field of psychology, my discipline, mine and my wife's discipline, and psychology largely focuses on human nature, right? Psychology studies the human experience. Now, however, psychology largely often hasn't had much to say about nature. However, we have another field, the field of ecology. This field, this discipline, well, they study nature. They study the natural world. They study ecosystems. However, ecology largely doesn't have much to say about the human experience. And so we have this separation between these fields, psychology and ecology. And we see this separation in other aspects of our experience. And, well, this separation, this disconnection, perhaps it speaks to a larger problem or a broader issue. This issue of disharmony between humans and nature, the separation between humans and nature. Our human systems are capitalistic, consumer, technological, progress-driven, hurry up, don't wait, go, 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 you haven't had enough society. Our human systems, well, they stand at odds with our natural systems. And there's this disharmony that we see. There's currently a climate crisis. Science has verified this is a human-driven climate crisis, an environmental crisis. And all the while, there's also a psychological crisis, a mental health crisis that we appear to be seeing. The humans of the world are suffering, and so too is nature. Nature's suffering as well. My colleague, Will Adams, said this so beautifully. Our world is wounded, and it wounds us in return. The suffering of humanity and the suffering of nature, they go along with one another. Now, the picture I have on my slide is a picture of the city of Beijing. This is the city on a typical day. You might think, oh, that's fog. No, that's smog. That's human-driven pollution. Now, check this out. Here's the city of Beijing on a clear day, an atypical day. But this is what Beijing normally would look like, maybe if humans weren't as much in the picture. This picture was taken during the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah, right? And as we know, much of human activities had come to a dramatic slow. And look at that, the city of Beijing. Nature appeared to be healthier as humans slowed down. And you might think, well, that's Beijing, China. No, I assure you, the same thing's happening here in our country, in the United States. It's happening everywhere across the globe. I lived in Chicago, grew up there. I lived in San Diego. These are both places with a lot of air pollution, and I've experienced this firsthand. Now, this disharmony between humans and nature. Well, you might be thinking, well, why do we act destructively, us evil humans? Well, we're not. We're not evil. We don't act destructively because we're evil. We act destructively because we're confused. We're misguided. We're fearful. And so we act this way. We look out for humans, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And you might also be thinking, well, it's not my problem. I'm not personally causing them. I use reusable water bottles. I recycle. I do all the things. Well, just because climate change is not your problem, that doesn't mean it's not your responsibility. It's all of our responsibility, even if we're already doing all the right things. And so part of this is because, well, environmental problems, they're behavioral problems. They're related to the actions being taken, and not the actions by animals or the rest of the world. These are human-driven behavioral problems. And our actions, well, our actions arise from our perspective. Our actions arise from our worldview, the way we see the world. And our worldview is reflective of our behaviors and our actions, and they arise from our thoughts, our beliefs, our values. And so perhaps we have a worldview that stands in disharmony from the rest of the natural world. My field, psychology, can help shed light on this. And more specifically, my discipline and my passion, ecopsychology, can really help to illuminate this disharmony, this problem, climate change. Now, you may be thinking, well, what is ecopsychology? I've spent about half of my talk now not telling you what ecopsychology is. Well, so ecopsychology is a sub-discipline of the field of psychology. Ecopsychology focuses on studying the human-nature connection and the implications of this relationship, both for better and for worse. So the benefits that greater connection bring, both for humans and nature, and also the consequences that disconnection between humans and nature bring. Now, ecopsychology attempts to take us to the roots of who we are as humans in the more than human world. As a species, humans came of age with nature, and that need for nature still resides in us, even if it seems we've largely forgotten that. And so ecopsychologists assert that, well, part of the issue is this distorted worldview that we have, this inaccurate perspective, perhaps. And well, ecopsychologists also suggest that, well, perhaps we need a different perspective. Perhaps we need a different worldview, one that will lead towards greater harmony between humans and nature. And so that's the message that I'm bringing today. That's the message of ecopsychology. So, our worldview may be part of the problem here. And so our worldviews, they matter. As I said, our worldview is the lens, the perspective that we bring into the world. It's how we experience the world. Our worldview is reflective of our thoughts, our beliefs, our values, ultimately our actions, our behaviors. And well, what kind of worldview do we see predominant in the United States, here in the US, and other developed nations, I would go to argue? Well, we often see a bit of a self-centered worldview. We often think, well, what's in it for me? What's good for me? Perhaps we're not self-centered. I hope we're not self-centered. But we might also be critical that there seems to be a human-centered worldview that predominates the United States, right? Humans, like in my figure, humans are at the top of the pyramid. Yeah. We dominate, we control, we master, and we exploit the rest of the world for human gains. It is the human experience, after all, right? Now, ecopsychology suggests that this worldview is too limited, for we exist as part of the web of life. And so perhaps we should be asking, well, what's good for us? Not what's good for us humans, but, well, what's good for all of us? Now, it's not enough to stop at the web of life. Ecopsychology and myself, I urge us, well, we need to expand this further. What's good for all of us? Let us put the earth at the center of our perspective. Plants, animals, humans, and the very life-sustaining systems themselves, like the climate, the health of our soil, biodiversity. It's not just the living things, but the non-living things. They're part of our world. And so ecopsychology calls us to move away from a self-centered or perhaps a human-centered worldview and towards this worldview of interconnectedness, union of all of life and non-life, the life-supporting systems. Now, one way for us to be thinking about this separation, this move from self to all, we could ask questions like, where do I stop? And where does nature begin? Think about this analogy. As we breathe out the carbon dioxide that the plants then take in, and the plants give off oxygen that we humans then breathe in, well, where do I stop and the plants begin? If I need the plants to help rid my carbon dioxide and give me the oxygen that we all so need. So where do we stop and where does other begin? Perhaps there is no separation. When we let go of these boundaries between self and other, we find that we are rooted in something deep, a deep source of life, of love. Life is what happens in between me and other. Life is what happens in that union. So, as we move away from this individualistic worldview, this human-centered, self-centered worldview, we can move towards union, and how do we do that? Well, love. It all comes down to love. And perhaps we've heard that maxim, that phrase, love thy neighbor as oneself. And nature has always been our cherished neighbor, right? Nature still is our cherished neighbor. However, it's not just for those close to us, our family, our friends, our community. The message is far more radical than that. It is to compassionately love and welcome strangers, to love and welcome our enemies. Life is calling us. Life, in all of its beauty as well as its suffering, is calling to be met with reverent care and loving awareness for humans and non-humans, living and non-living, for all of life. So, life is asking us to be with and to be for others in this open, loving way. We can turn to nature for this lesson. We can see love in nature. The natural world helps to pull us out of our self. It helps to pull us into cooperative coexistence with the rest of the world, living and non-living. There are other teachers we can turn to for this lesson. Children. Children exemplify this lesson of love before they become enculturated in our busy, stress, don't stop, go, go, go lifestyle. Oh, and don't worry, by, 7, 8, 9, they're starting to pick up on it. But kids, yeah. We could turn to animals, our animal companions, as I mentioned. We can look at our animals, our animals, as if they're ours. The animals, they exemplify this cooperative coexistence, this love, unconditional love. And then finally, the other teacher, well, the thing that's hard to describe, for which there are no words. Some of us use God, perhaps, or the divine, spirit, the universe, the great mystery. Whatever word works for you. For me, love. Love fits that. And so we can turn to love as a key teacher because, well, with love, we are freed from this self-centered, individualistic worldview, and we're open to the union, the union of us with all. Nature helps us to see love. We can look to the natural world. Now, as I mentioned, it's not enough to love the beauty, but it's also to love the suffering and stand witness to suffering and bear suffering. That is love, unconditional love. And nature, well, nature has suffered across time. Nature has suffered across generations. And often we don't pay attention. Often it's unconscious to us, that suffering. I'd like us all to think back to that moment, that experience, that memory we had of connecting with nature. Think back to that moment. I'd like to ask you all this question. What would that experience have been like during your parents' time? What would that place have been like during your parents' time? What would that experience or that place been like during your grandparents' time? Yeah. In many cases, as the world has become increasingly developed, well, nature has become diminished. Nature has become destroyed. And yet, to us, those experiences that I asked us to draw from, that is nature to us. But is that what nature was like 50 years ago? 100 years ago? What have we lost that we don't even feel grief for or know that we've lost? And so some might ask, well, how much have we lost if we never knew we lost it? I don't know what the forests were like 100 years ago. I don't know. Well, and ecopsychology suggests this is part of the problem. There's an idea from ecopsychology called environmental generational amnesia. What this term suggests is that our experience of nature is based on the environment of which we're born into. And so nature, as it is now, becomes the new normal. Yeah, nature nowadays is normal and healthy nature. But as I asked us all to reflect on, well, what was nature like 50 years ago, 100 years ago? What was this world like 200 years ago? I'm not saying that we should go back to those times. I hardly think it's possible for us to go back to more indigenous, harmonious ways of living with the natural world. We live in this technologically driven society. It's part of it. And we grow up in this society and we think, well, this is the way it is. This is the way it is. Yeah, I was born into this. And yet, we may forget, no, this is the way humans have made things. And we can change. We can be better. Maybe you came across this article a couple months ago. There was a scientific report that was put out, October, I believe. In the last 20 years, St. Johns County, our very home, has lost 40% of its tree canopy. Yeah, I know. I read this report. I went to the scientific report from Global Forest Watch. My heart broke when I was learning about these facts and finding out just how much we had lost. And yet, my mind went to, well, how many trees have been lost since 1970? What does my mother-in-law remember of her nature experience of St. Johns County? What was it like for my grandmother-in-law who grew up in Jacksonville in the early 1900s? What have we lost since then? And so, perhaps your heart is breaking, like mine. I suggest our hearts are breaking open, though. And let us invite nature into that spot in our hearts And let us let that love transform us and our relationship with the world, the more than human world, plants, animals, and the very life-sustaining systems themselves. So this is ecopsychology. Ecopsychology is a movement in service of life. It's a movement in service of love. And it starts small. It all starts with us. And so I hope you let my message of love and my message of connection with the natural world echo in you and ripple outward. It starts with us, and we can encourage others to encourage others, and slowly we can change the world. Thank you all.